Sunday night.
Decorating here at TLCC, getting ready for Vacation Bible School. And if you haven't signed up, it's not too late. We still need some guides, and we still need some more volunteers. And so I see, well, you can see Jenny Floyd. She'll be back from vacation on Thursday, or come to the office or check with Vicki or myself, and we'll help you get all signed up for VBS. Anything else that we need to announce for the good of the congregation? No? If not, then please take a few moments and welcome one another. Don't forget to sign in the attendance notebook tab that you find in your pew, and let's welcome one another this morning in the spirit of love.
This
And this side over here, you're all still kind of moving around, welcoming newcomers. But this week, did you notice there was a change? This side was seated and ready to go and begin worship. And this side, you're still doing that friendship fellowship moment. And so, good for you, good for you. Okay, there's been a change since I've been gone. All right. So, let us begin with our entry this morning.
As you can see, the loft is empty.
Oh,
And there are people behind me who like me. I don't pay them, they just kind of showed up. I think that's the answer to that great mystery over here. In this time of summertime, when the choir takes their break, eating short becomes our collective responsibility. So I would ask you to take your hymnal, turn to number 92, and we'll do the first and last verse of Oh, How I Love Jesus together.
Praise the name of the Lord, O servants of God.
Let all who stand in the house of the Lord and in his courts give praise to the Lord.
Servants, leaders, ministers, each and every one gathered here this day.
We are all called to be apostles, believers, Christians, disciples. We are called to be a people of his presence. Oh,
I'm going to say. I know you're excited about that. But it's going to be something I'm going to talk about children. So this is kind of important to you. What do I have in my hand right here? I said it, didn't I? What do I have in my hand? A name tag. Why do we wear name tags? So people know my name. Okay. Lots of teachers at the beginning of the year will give you a name tag, and they might wear one, especially if you're little. They might. Now, this is really helpful. Me, people wear their name tags here, so I get to know their names because I'm kind of slow at that. All right. What's important about your name? Why is your name important, Charlotte? What does it tell me? Tell me how old you are? Okay, but does your name tell me that? What does your name tell me? Who you are. So, we have names so we know who we are. If I call you on the phone, that's a call, right? If I look out and I say, oh, hi, Hugh, and he waves back, I called his name. I didn't say Mike or George. That's who he is. I called his name. That's what we're going to talk about today. When God calls us, he knows us. We talked a couple of weeks ago, he even knows what we're about to do and what we think. In Bible school, we're going to talk about a man. Actually, it's one of my favorite stories, Zacchaeus, that God calls into service for him. So call is really important. Phone call your name, and knowing who you are really is how we are identified or known in the world. It's how God knows us. Now, at the end of the service today, you miss this because you're usually down the hall with me. We have what we call a benediction. It's the leading words to send us out into the world. I want you to listen to that because it's going to tell us exactly what we talked about in Sunday school the last couple of weeks about what do we do when we walk to church? Why are we here? And what are we supposed to take with us when we go? So let us pray. Dear Lord, dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for the rain. And all the people who came out in the rain. Thank you for calling our name. And that we can call your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Our reading this morning is number 591, verses 1, 2, and 4. I'm not in the way for it.
Amen.
blessings that we received are prayers of intercession, asking for God's continued blessings in our life. I'd like to direct you, of course, as always, to our bulletin where we have a list of prayer concerns for members of the church, family members, friends, our community as a whole. But are there any other concerns that we'd like to lift up at this time? Okay?
It's fine.
Okay.
Fine. I'd like to lift up my friend from Pennsylvania, Mark Midlick. He lost his father on Wednesday morning.
Definitely keep those who've lost people in prayer at this time. Okay?
I'd like to have prayers for my sister-in-law, Evelyn, who is going through some medical problems.
All right.
Prayers for our mom because she was almost in a big car accident a few days ago. So just prayer for joy.
Yes, Thanksgiving that there was no injury there.
All right, everybody, look who's here. Yay. He's graduated from all the rehab and everything, and he's home. Well, he's been home most of the time, but I won't be taking him, or he won't be taking himself to all those appointments. It'll be more fun.
Definitely Thanksgiving for that healing. Have we got any other? Okay.
Lynn needs prayers for an upcoming hospital. Lynn.
Okay, so prayers for Lynn, definitely. I'd like you all to keep Paula in prayer. Friday she was diagnosed with a case of shingles, so she's fighting with that right now. Just the way to spend the summer.
That was for me to go to church camp on Wednesday.
Yes, definitely prayer for the folks headed to church camp. In that case, let's take a few minutes or a few moments to call to mind all these prayers, all the concerns that we have in our heart, all the joys that we have in our heart that maybe we haven't spoken quite yet. And let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you. We thank you for the joys that you bring into our life. We thank you for the comfort in difficult times. We thank you for the bright sun and good weather of summer, and we thank you for the rain that comes
Sometimes we're a little late in answering the call. Sometimes we kind of ignore the call. Sometimes it's like, who, me? But what you need to know is that at the table of communion, we are all called to come and to be a part, to partake, to remember, to recognize that God loves each and every one of us so much that He sent His only Son into the world for each and every one of us. And so this is the table of remembrance, where we are all called to accept the love, the grace, the forgiveness, the sacrifice of Christ Jesus. And so we come and we answer that call by partaking of the bread and of the cup. And so we are reminded once again that on that night Jesus called His disciples together and said, "This is my body, broken for you." And in the same manner, after supper, He took the cup, and after giving a prayer of thanks, said, "This is the new covenant. This is my blood that is shed, that is spilled, that is poured out for all, for forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me." Let us pray.
Lord, as we come to this table today, let it help prepare us for the week to come. As we remember your Son who died on the cross so many years ago, with His love for each and every one of us. As we partake of this bread, let us remember Him as we do.
Loving God, thank you for this day. Thank you that we've heard the call to come around this table. As we lift up this cup, fill us with your spirit. Guide and direct us so that we can be about being your servants in this place. In your Son's holy name we pray. Amen.
The welcome table, the Lord's Supper, Holy Communion, the Eucharist. For all, so that all may participate, that all are called to partake. Thanks be to God. to receive, called to give, called to participate. As we continue our worship, let us continue to not only receive, but to give of our time, our talents, our treasures to our God. Let us collect the morning offering.
Different spot this morning. Our scripture for today is the scripture I picked as a mission worker to be my mantra. It's Matthew 19:26, and Jesus is gathered with his followers, and he's telling them things about people being saved and good things. And he says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And so that phrase has kind of become how I live. I guess it is how I live. So I'm going to literally start with the words that I would use if I were still on the mission field and came back to speak with you. Now you all know I'm a Presbyterian, so you're going to hear that in here. Good morning. I bring you greetings from PC USA, Webster Presbyterian Church in Webster, Texas, and the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Now, as I said, these are the words that I started everything with. If you don't know what United Church is, this will give you a smile. So many of you do know this, we've discussed it. In Jamaica, the Disciples of Christ and the Presbyterians were kind of like, you know, we might need to get together because we're really close. And we need to build a stronger church. So they did what? They united. It's the United Church. And that is who I served for 2 wonderful years. Now, I could spend a lot of hours, and Adela will attest to that because I have been in her ear telling her experiences being a missionary. But today I want to share what call is. Me? A call from God. What is that? How do you know when it happens to you? How are you chosen to receive a call? And once you receive the call, what do you do with it? There are questions these are questions that most people ask when someone says they have answered God's call. I know that's what I always said. Like many my age, I was raised in a Christian home and my parents taught Sunday school, Bible school. We were there every time the door opened. My brother and I were in every activity there was. And so choir, Sunday school, Bible school, whatever, ended up, then you helped in Sunday school, Bible school when you were in the youth. Church worship was an integral part of our lives. You cannot imagine the horror I felt in the first grade when I learned that many of my classmates were not attending church. Some never. They laughed at me because I did. And I could not reach out and grab a hold of that at all. Even my parents tried to explain it to me. Because church and worshiping God were integral parts of our lives. When I was 18 years old, I was involved in a major car accident. Upon arrival at the scene with wreckers and law enforcement and bystanders and an ambulance on the way, my mother was horrified to see the wreckage of what had been my first car as it was turned upside down in southeast Houston on Telephone Road with a little bit of flame and the gas tank gurgling, and it was totaled. But of course, that didn't bother her. She looked at me and she looked at the car, and I will never forget her words because she looked at me and said, God has something for you to do. I was 18 years old. And in my little head, I thought, okay, I'm 18, I'm about to go off to college. What in the world does God have for me to do? Because, I thought it was going to happen right that second. Years passed, and life happened. I graduated with a bachelor's degree, became a teacher. I married, I had 2 children. I got a master's degree. I taught. The love of my life, teaching. And throughout all those years, I remained an active church member, raised my children in the same church I was raised in, and taught of God's love. They actually have some of the same people who rocked me in the nursery with them, and some of the people who taught me Sunday school taught them. It was really kind of cool. We were all active members, and to us, church was and is an integral part of life. Even today, I have great difficulty and sadness when I meet someone and they tell me, well, I don't find faith in church important. And they seem to be fine without it. And I'm like, time has passed very quickly. My children have grown into educated, successful Christian adults, both educators. My parents and even my brother are with God. Life has moved on. In 2003, I was sitting in a worship service in a very small Presbyterian church in LaPorte. I was actively looking for a larger church, not that I didn't like the church, but this is call. I just kept feeling this urge that I needed to go somewhere else. Though I love the pastor, still do. She walked to the pulpit and said, instead of preaching today, I'm going to be reading you a letter. I moaned. The lady next to me elbowed me because I'm on too loud. Because, I thought, look, I'm a teacher. I read. I can read. But, of course, I was trapped. I was in the middle of the pew. So, I tried to be a nice person and listen. Well, are you ready? It was a letter written by a missionary couple from Presbyterian Church who were on the island of Vanuatu in the Indian Ocean. Now, the pastor started off and said, does anybody know where Vanuatu is? And I went, and she said, put your hand down. You teach history and geography. Okay. But she explained, now I love how people do things in church because from the back of the congregation comes somebody and says, oh yeah, that's where they're filming Survivor right now. They never knew where it was. So I have never watched Survivor, but I watched the rest of that season. Because the letter told us so many interesting things. Side note here, one of the funny things it said was, they were watching the filming of Survivor. Vanuatu is a beautiful island, you know, has volcanoes, they have tsunamis, all that. And they have tourists, imagine. And they have a McDonald's. So they took the yellow tape and they quarter off the area where the survivors are trying to eat bugs and find things to eat and such. And the whole time that's happening, they can smell hamburgers at McDonald's. and the man that wrote the letter said, and you talk about torture, you know, they were just like, you know, and they're so, we feel guilty knowing that, but we still do it, you know. Their letter told of the schools where they taught, the beauty of the island, the views, the beauty of the people inside and out. And these two American teachers had become family with those they went to serve. That's what happens. Now, the more I heard this letter, I was really uncomfortable. And though some people scoff when I say this, it is the truth. My right shoulder started to ache. And the pressure was like someone was standing next to me just pushing with an elbow. And by the end of the letter, I realized I was rubbing my shoulder and it really did hurt. We were all moved by the letter. It was well written. It made us feel as though we were on that island with a couple. And they were truly two teachers who received the call and were sharing their experience as they served God. I struggled with a painful shoulder and little sleep for several nights. I dreamed of that letter. I can still quote 2 parts of that letter. I dreamed of the couple. I dreamed of, I wonder what their school is like. I wonder what things are like there in education. The lives they led, the joy and the fulfillment you could just hear in their words. And finally, it dawned on me, this letter was God's way of getting my attention. And boy, had he. I'm calling you to do something like this. You can teach. I'll send you somewhere. Do something. Do something? Where and when? I had 3 more years to teach before I could ever think about retiring. And that would be the first possible minute of retirement. So this led me to a time of discernment. I had to figure out, why is this letter haunting me, but what does God want me to do? Call is a lot of things. Teachers, we say we're called to be teachers. Pastors are called to be pastors. Musicians are called to be musicians. We are called to do things. Volunteers, church members, you're called to do it. People say, I think I'll come help you with Bible school. That's a call. I didn't really know where to start. So after much prayer and talking with a pastor, by then I had moved to the bigger church. I actually applied not only with PCUSA, but with Peace Corps. They are both faith-based. I figured if Lillian Carter could go on to Peace Corps, I could go on to Peace Corps. There you are. And they both serve man and God. So once again, here's another quandary. What am I supposed to do? Though the whole time I really felt, of course, pulled to the church. I told the church, I told the Peace Corps, I am applying with both of you. And they were both fine because that's not unusual. I didn't know them. One day at school, during my off period, I got on the computer and I went to the PCUSA website. And there it was, literally in black and white. The position that God was trying to get me to wake up to see is where he needed me to go. I read of the need of a music and art teacher who could serve in 2 churches and a church school. Church school, once again, United Church, Presbyterians and Disciples getting together here. It was in Tower Isle, Jamaica. Okay, cool. In 2003, my daughter and I had gone to Jamaica for a week, and she reminded me at the time that when we left, I said, I didn't get my stay out. I need to come back. And she said, Mom, you didn't say I need to come back and live for 2 years. But I did. I sent this email both of my children and said, look at this posting. Now my children are very much alike and very, very different, so I knew I would get a really good view. I was not going to let them tell me where to go or not to go, but I wanted just their input with their adults. So, within 5 minutes, I heard from my son, and he said, Mom, this is for you, go for it. And right behind him, my daughter said, it sounds just like you, Mom, what a great opportunity. And since we'd been there, we knew what a beautiful place and what lovely people. Now, you don't just automatically go. There's this thing called money. And it's been changed a little bit in the Presbyterian Church on how you glean money to go. But at that time, I had to raise 110% of a year's salary. That's a funny salary thing. That helped them pay for my insurance, all that kind of thing. And to pay me, I received sustenance pay. That's what it was. It sustained me. It was not a job. It was serving God. It was a mission. But they did want me to have lights, gas, water, that kind of thing. Okay, so I began to pray, thanking God for this opportunity. It was His plan. He wanted me to do it. I prayed for guidance in the steps I would take. And over the next 18 months, I went through the process of becoming a mission worker. It meant that I sent letters to everybody I knew, every church I knew of, several denominations there, anybody that would donate. I stood in the narthex in my choir row many a Sunday morning, and people would come by and they'd put checks, you know. The choir, which I always sang on the first row of the choir director came to me and said, oh, I've got an idea. He's a wonderful person, he and his wife, and that's what I said. He said, we're going to do a concert to raise money. And I looked at him and I said, okay. He said, oh, he had it all figured out. It's going to be the Vicky concert, and we're going to take an offering. He'd already talked to some of the ladies there. Imagine that. They already had figured out a silent auction, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, cool. He said, and you're going to speak on Jamaica. Now, believe it or not, the first thing in my presentation was a map of the world. Here is where Jamaica is. Because a lot of people ask me, are you going to drive there? Now, my thought was, no, because they drive on the other side. But they meant, are you going to drive to get there? No. So it was really enlightening. And we worked on that and everything, and really did glean a lot of money from that. And it was a really amazing experience. Two little side notes on how you never know what people will do. I was standing out in the narthex one Sunday morning, and a lady that I know very well had her little grandson. At that time, he was little. And they came out of the church, and she said, oh, there's the missionary lady. Take it to her. So he ran over, like only a little kid can do, and he had his hand, and you know how kids carry things in their hands? He opened his hand, and it was this wadded up $5 bill. And he handed it to me and he said, here, Miss Vicky, this is so you can go teach boys and girls in Jamaica. That's one of the best gifts I received the whole time to do God's work. At where I was teaching at the time and where I retired in Pasadena, there was a lady there that I knew pretty well. But I guess you never know how people are going to be affected by it. She had family at Webster, so I would see her visit Webster quite often. And she's the orchestra director, and of course I have all these musicians in my family, so we had this bond. And one day she walked down from the orchestra room to my classroom, and she said, I just want you to know that we have not forgotten that, you know, that you're trying to get out on the mission field, but we're praying earnestly on what we think we can contribute to this. And I said, oh, well, you know, I really appreciate it. Well, the next week I was on morning duty. All the teachers will love that one. I was on morning duty, and this lady walked up and she had a check and she handed it to me, folded. And she said, bless you, and she walked off. I stuck it in my pocket. In the middle of first period, I was just teaching away, and I reached in my pocket and realized that check was in there. And I thought, oh, I need to open this and go thank her. These are two teachers, and it was a check for $1,000. I did everything but run down to the orchestra room going, oh my gosh. And because that's a lot of money to most of us. And she said, oh no, we prayed on this, you're going. And when we can, we'll help you more. God's service, a servant. I know it was a sacrifice. I went through 2 weeks of training in Toronto. That was amazing. It was a very interesting training because there were 17 of us. We represented 5 denominations in the Christian world. And we were taught everything from, they hooded us, blindfolded us, hooded us, and put our hands behind our back in case we got taken anywhere. And I had claustrophobia really bad, but I managed to get the hood where I could kind of, in the eye thing, so I could kind of see through and see a little bit of light. And they asked all 17 of us, one of which was a teenager, how long have you been like this? And we all said, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 7 minutes. And we were all trained for a lot of different things. Everybody learned about malaria, but I was going to the one place where there was no malaria. Yes. But nobody taught me anything about dengue fever. I don't know if you know much about dengue fever. I got it while I was in Jamaica. You have a 60% chance of dying with it. It's mosquito bound, but same thing. You get a bite from a mosquito. I have the scar where it bit me. She bit me, whoever. But they trained us in everything. Or tried to. We visited many churches in Toronto. We visited a mosque. Had a wonderful day there. We visited a Hindu temple. Because everywhere we were all going, they were not all going to be Christians. There were going to be many religions, many different beliefs. Then we came back to Louisville, Kentucky, which is the home of the Presbyterian Church, for another week. And in January of 2007, I stood at the front of Webster Presbyterian Church, and they commissioned me to be a mission worker, a missionary. This had been a long process through PCUSA of questions and tests and prayer and guidance and more prayer and 3 weeks of intense training with others. I stood in front of the congregation and promised to do what God had called me to do. And they promised to continue to be my loving supporters. And it was an experience of love and some fear, preparation for a totally different life in a new place of God's service. Now, some of you have gotten to know me pretty well, and I'm really such a type A and so detail-oriented that I couldn't get enough questions answered. I just went to my principal one day in September before I went on the mission field in January, and I said, I'm taking off 2 days next week. And he said, okay. And now he said, what's wrong? And I said, nothing's wrong. I'm going to Jamaica. And he looked at me, and I said, on my own money. I want to go see my house. I want to see the school. He said, but you've been there. I didn't see my house and my school when I was a tourist. So I did that. It is a third world country. Their joke there is they're a 2.5 world, because they're a little bit ahead of some of the third world. Much poverty, very, very little middle class. I always refer to them as the haves and have-nots, but you can't always tell which is which. And that was a really interesting thing for me. So I went. I flew down. I was met by a representative of the United Church. They took me to this cute hotel in Kingston where every room was a flower. Okay, it's the Caribbean, so everything's bright and colorful. My room was the orchid room, so everything was orchid. And I spent 3 nights. And I went to see my school, which is the Iona Prep School. Prep school, not like we think of prep school. Prep school to get you to the high school. Pretty high dues to go there, fees. Everybody there wears a uniform. Every school, public school in Jamaica, everybody wears a uniform. Of course, it was hot. And I met a lot of the kids, and that was a lot of fun. But the one thing I really realized was I was going to live on the school compound. So I lived, and this is really great, I lived in a school, in a house that had been built by the Disciples Church. It was concrete walls. I wasn't going anywhere. Lived through 2 hurricanes there. We weren't going anywhere. Let me tell you. We watched devastation from up on the top of the hill, but we were fine. We being, top of me was the high school principal. I was on the bottom floor. My school was here, her school was there. We could both see our schools because we walked down the hill to go to school. I saw the school, that was amazing. They don't have any musical instruments and they don't have any art supplies. And I'm going to teach music and art. And I was like, oh my goodness. Well, they got voices, we'll start there. But on that Sunday, I was picked up and I was taken into, further into Kingston to Webster. How about that? Webster United Church, which I thought that was really funny. Beautiful church. They have to understand, there's no AC. So everything is wide open. Beautiful churches, most of them to look out on the Caribbean. I forgot to tell you, I would sit on my veranda, that's the front porch, and look at the sea all day. I know that's sad. Beautiful turquoise water. I look from my classroom and see it also. I got to see where I was going. I had a list of questions. I know that shocks you because I give her a list of questions every Monday. And I got them all answered. I thought, until I got home. But then I knew where I was going to live. I took pictures. I showed them at that concert I told you about. And then I retired. I retired teaching. Nowhere in my life had I ever thought I was going to retire teaching that early. But I did. Because God was sending me somewhere. I was answering that call. Several people asked me if I was scared. You didn't know one person on that island. I did know a few from my visit, but no, I didn't. I really didn't. So, 3 days after the commissioning by my church, I went to Bush with 2 pieces of luggage and flew to Jamaica. I was so excited I could hardly sit still on the airplane. That was January. Now, think January. I had on a sleeveless sweater with a cardigan and landed, and it was 92 degrees. Well, that cardigan was gone. Let me tell you, it was, it took me about 3 weeks to acclimate. It really did. And then when I would come home to visit, I would freeze to death because we had air conditioning here. I really sat on that airplane, and it's not a very long flight, but I really did pray and ask God to help me do what He wanted me to do. He'd call me, here I am, Lord, you know. And the music director at Webster, she and her husband are, and Mike and Joy know them. They're good friends of mine. I never will forget, she looked at me and said, I told her, I said, you know, Jerry, I'm ready to go, but wow. She said, well, Vicki, don't forget, God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the call. Boy, did that help me. I still remember that a lot. And not one time did I ever doubt my call. I never, ever, ever looked at it and thought, I heard it. I literally felt it with my shoulder. That's a call. I received it and I responded. My contract was 2 years, and people say, well, why aren't you still there? You loved it so much. So let me explain to you. When the disciples and the Presbyterians bonded to make the church, the United Church, it was agreed that when you go as a missionary, you go take a job that that entity cannot afford to pay somebody to do. The music teacher and art teacher had left Iona Prep School. They didn't have the money to pay anybody. So I went for them for free. With the thought, when somebody walks up at the end of 2 years and says, you know, here's some money, you can hire a teacher or whatever, I'll go. So about 1.5 years into my time there, I began to think, okay, Lord, if I'm going to go back to Texas, I got to have a job. So what's going on here? You know, what am I supposed to do? Somebody on the island passed away, and they left a very, very nice amount of money to Iona Prep School for a music and art teacher, a Jamaican, because that was the whole goal, to give a Jamaican a job. It was this very nice young man, as far as I know, is still there. Since I returned to the States, I have spoken many times at many different denominations. And my favorite times are with children, of course, you know. I think you pretty much know me by now. I was speaking at a Catholic church in Clear Lake during a summer, about 3 summers ago. They were wonderful, kind of like, you know, lots of churches, little camp there. And it was storming outside. I mean, ugly, ugly, lightning. I had 4-year-olds, 8 4-year-olds sitting at my feet. I was in a little chair, they were around me. And I was about to read to them. I wrote a children's book on Jamaica. And I was about to read my book to them, and I said, I moved to Jamaica. I answered God's call to serve in another country. I will never forget the astonished look on the face of the little boy right at my feet. Now, he's 4. He looked so shocked. He was so excited. He looked at me and he said, oh, well, I did not know God had a cell phone. He called you. Now, I had to really try not to laugh and then really try to explain call to a 4-year-old. But I will never forget, his life was made. He was going to call God and talk to him. It is difficult to explain call. Is it a voice? Is it your shoulder hurts? Is it a nudge? Is it a dream? Is it a phone call? What is it? Mine was a letter. The pastor that read the letter wanted me to add this, and I am. When I went to be trained to be a missionary, I was called into an office to where, you know, I always had to tell about where I lived, and they always were warning me about hurricanes. I said, I live in Houston, really? I'm a native Houstonian. We didn't skip this. And so the gentleman that was interviewing me said, well, Vicki, what was your call? And so I told him what I told you about the letter. And I got about halfway through it, and there was a knock on the door, and he motioned to this gentleman, and he came and sat right next to me. And I finished talking. He said, could you start that over for me? And I said, sure. And I got to, here's why I'm sitting here talking to you in Louisville about being a missionary. And this man started to cry. Now, I don't get real uncomfortable real easily, but I was like, you know. And I looked at him, and he stood up. And he came and hugged me, and he said, I'm the man that wrote the letter. So see, I still, how many years later, I still keep up with him. But that was just amazing. And when we finished talking, he said, I'll be right back. And he ran down the hall and got his wife. And he said, she read the letter. And that was kind of a joke. Somebody reads the letters, you know. But it is interesting. Whatever your call, it is there and it requires an answer. Sometimes it's put off. It took me really about 24 months because I had to be able to retire and then go. Once you have it, there's a lot of discernment. There's prayer, scripture, reviewing your talents, your strengths, and your weaknesses. We had psychological testing to go, and they really still let me go. That was amazing. I was like, really? Because I just knew she was going to say, oh, no, you're nuts. You can't go. And she said, no, she did tell me something. And my daughter's visiting today. She'll tell you this is true. She said, but you know, on this one test, you're very defensive. Now, as I got to know her, I told her later, I started to say, what do you mean I'm defensive? But I said to her, because I was kind of like, oh, she's not going to let me go. And I said, is that bad? She said, no, it means you, on this test, you put your best foot forward. If you didn't, then we might discuss that you might not be the person who needs to go to another country. Okay, good. You have to figure out the path. If it's a 10-day mission trip, if it's serving food at Bible school, whatever it is. Not everybody's going to be a pastor, not everybody's going to be a missionary. So here are the questions that I always think about, and the answer is, you're the one called by God. And what? He's going to tell you the task. He will one way or the other reveal. Where, when, and how? Well, depending on the task, you will plan, and you will plan, and you will plan, and you will change your life to that task. Call on anyone and everyone to help. Ask questions. Why? Because God has chosen you. You. There's a reason He chooses us to do whatever it is that is His work. It takes time. It takes preparation. It may be an hour. It may be years. God is in control, and He has chosen you. So let Him lead. And may God bless you in whatever He calls you to do.
Amen. God bless you, Vicki, and answering the call. And know that, yes, indeed, we are all called. Some of you have been called to serve at Parsons House. Some of you have been called to serve at Interfaith Caring Ministries. Some of you have been called for the week-long mission trip of hope, helping other people everywhere. Some of you have been called as leaders of church camp. Some of you have been called as elders. Some of you have been called as diaconate. Some of you have been called as choir members to use your talents and gifts. But we have all been called. And so it is for us to receive and to respond to that call. And it starts by saying, yes, I believe that Jesus is indeed Lord and Savior of my life. And then it starts by saying, yes, I believe that I would like to be a part of Taylor Christian Church. So this morning, I invite you to receive and to respond to answering the call, either by confession of faith or by transfer of membership, as we stand and sing our hymn of invitation.
I'd like you to stand and turn to page 672, Almighty God We Serve.
You go nowhere by accident. Wherever you go, God is sending you. Wherever you are, God has put you there. He has a purpose in your being there. God, Christ, who indwells you, has something He wants to do through you where you are. Believe this and go in His grace and love and power.